Hey guys, welcome to my morning commute to the office, and we wanted to have a special dashboard confessional this morning and talk about something that we talked about a couple of weeks back, a question that we asked you concerning worship busters. Worship busters are about those little pet peeves that we have. We asked the question, what do you see worship leaders doing that really get under your skin, or what really kills worship for you? One of those forms of the question. And we got a lot of different responses from you, and quite honestly, still getting responses on Twitter and also here on the blog too as well. And so we thought we'd take at random times throughout the ensuing months, we take the opportunity to address some of those concerns. One of the ones that we keep hearing about is the topic of the mini sermon. Yeah, the mini sermon. I'm sure that you've heard one of those before, or even worse, you've probably given one or two of them before. What are we talking about? Well, basically the gist of the mini sermon is when a worship leader stands up and gives almost the equivalent of a sermon on his end. And I want you to understand that there's a definite difference between a time and a place when something needs to be said by a worship leader. Maybe there's a thought process or something that needs to be addressed. There is such thing called didactic worship. We need to understand why we're doing what we're doing within worship. And sometimes certain things need to be explained, and maybe there's a process that needs to be explained, or maybe there is something that needs to be explained that can't be necessarily translated through song. I understand that there are those moments, but there are some worship leaders that those moments seem to come as a transition between every song, regardless of whether or not the entire set is done in the key of B or not. They talk between every song, and it usually begins with, that song reminds me of a time in my life when or something of that nature. How do you get to that point where we're doing mini sermons? Well, most of the time it's because we feel uncomfortable. We feel like there's a need to say something, and we feel like that there's a need to fill time or to make a transition between songs happen, or to sometimes even worse, we feel the need to make the Spirit occur. Let me just address the last one. You're not there to make the Spirit occur. I mean, that's not our place. We hear all the time people that say, I just want to create worship. Well, you can't do that. You can't create worship. People are already worshiping the moment they walk in the door. Whether or not it's money, whether or not it's God, whether or not it's their spouse, whether or not it's the clothes they're wearing, they're worshiping something. It's our job to hopefully try to direct that worship where it needs to be directed to, and to prevent all distractions from that worship going to where it needs to be directed to. And sometimes in that process, when we start delivering mini sermons, we're actually hindering that process, believe it or not. So, the other reasons why we do it, we do it because we feel like we need to fill time, or we need to have something to say. How do we get around that feeling that we need to? Well, for one thing, we need to understand that sometimes there just are no words that need to be said whatsoever. I'm really loving a song right now by Carlos Whitaker called No Words. And if you haven't listened to it already, I want to encourage you to listen to it. I'm going to include a link below this article that's going to include a link to that song. You can pick it up on iTunes. It's a great song. If the song fits with your particular music type within your church, I really recommend you start maybe trying to incorporate it. and it's a great song, and it totally fits what we're talking about today, because sometimes there simply aren't any words that we'd have to say, because our words simply don't fit what our God has done for us. And sometimes the best way that you can transition between songs is by saying nothing at all. There have been plenty of times when I might just take a step back from a song, and I may say, let's just be silent for a moment and see what God would have to say to us. And I'll be quiet. Is it awkward to some? Yeah. I'm sure maybe it is. But does it give other people the opportunity to think about maybe something that God's been working on in their heart for a while, and maybe in that moment I'm not directing something, but maybe it gives God the opportunity to speak something that maybe He's been speaking for the past week to him, maybe he just needs to be reminded of again. Or maybe it's something brand new that God needs to be saying that I'm not going to be able to, for even a moment, address each individual person with where they're at within their lives. But you know what? God can. And God can do that a whole lot better than what Jason Whitehorn can. And God can do that a whole lot better than what you can. So, listen, if you're in the habit of doing the mini sermons, try to find ways of cutting them out. Find ways of inserting some silence in there, and just give those moments of transitions to where you can let God do His work, and let the people communicate with God in that way through quiet prayer in the middle of worship. I'm telling you that those moments do work. Those moments are needed. If you ever have a question on whether or not you're guilty of the mini sermon, why don't you ask one of your peers? If your pastor's ever come up to you and told you, I do the preaching around here, that's probably a good indication. But just ask one of your peers. Do you think that I talk too much? And just see what they have to say. But in any case, if you're interested in how the transitioning with silence kind of mentality works, then I would absolutely encourage you to take a look at some of our other videos. We have a video here that you can click over my shoulder, and that'll take you to one of our videos where we kind of show you from I think a couple of years back a situation where I use silence to transition in between songs, and so you can see kind of how that works. In any case, if you've got more thoughts on these worship busters, things that kill worship for you, or things that you've seen worship leaders do, or worship teams do that really kind of kill worship for you, drop us a line or two. You can leave a comment down below, or you can send us an email. Send me an email at jason@gotworship.net, or you can of course follow us on Twitter and send that to us at Twitter @GotWorship, or me directly on Twitter @Jason Whitehorn. Thanks, have a great day, and God bless.